Hi, this is Martha with Nature Niche, and this week I want to talk to you about being a good bird feeder steward in your own backyard, and specifically talk about Salmonellosis in wild bird populations. This is a bacterial disease caused by Salmonella bacteria, and these bacteria are gram-negative and rod-shaped, and they're known to be carried by diverse creatures, including humans and domestic animals, wild birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. Common diseases caused by this genus of bacteria include fowl typhoid, mouse typhoid, and paratyphoid fever. It's been observed in avian species across the world, and in Michigan, it's been isolated from species including the American goldfinch, bald eagle, black-capped chickadees, blue jays, brown creeper, brown-headed cowbird, chipping sparrow, common grackle, common redpoll, Cooper's hawk, dark-eyed junco, double-crested cormorant, evening grosbeaks, ring-billed and herring gulls, American tree sparrow, white-winged crossbill, and house sparrows. First diagnosed in Michigan in 1970, winter die-offs may occur around bird feeders, and that's been a somewhat common occurrence. To my knowledge, there are no broad issues or outbreaks in Michigan or in the Midwest currently. I just want you to be aware that this disease exists, and you might be hearing about it along the west coast of the United States, the winter of 2020-2021 pine siskin salmonella outbreak. So I wanted to discuss that and just talk to you about why it's important to have clean feeders and bird baths. Do that regularly. So outbreaks are often correlated with eruptive years of mass finch migration. So I think we should be observant and aware of what's going on with the birds at our backyard feeders, especially as spring migration takes place. This disease is primarily transmitted by fecal contamination of food and water by sick birds, but it can be transmitted directly from bird to bird. So here's what you should look for. These are photos of a sick American goldfinch that I believe is showing symptoms. So look for either birds that appear thin or fat, have feathers that are fluffed up. They may have swollen eyelids or the look of sunken eyes or half-closed eyes. This bird is exhibiting both. Here's a healthy American goldfinch for comparison. You can see feathers aren't fluffed. Here's another sick bird at a window feeder, showing some of the other symptoms: unsteadiness, shivering, accelerated respiration. Birds may also have diarrhea and matted vent feathers. They might be lethargic, just generally not acting like the surrounding birds. This particular one was feeding really late in the day when all the other birds had gone to roost. So another symptom. And having matter around the beak or difficulty swallowing or drinking can also be symptoms. And as I said before, this disease is most common amongst finch species like pine siskins, common redpolls, and American goldfinches. Some infected birds are asymptomatic and don't have any outward sign of the disease, but they can still spread the infection to other birds and animals. So shouldn't be a concept too foreign to us after everything we've been through with COVID-19. And just again points to the importance of having clean bird feeders and bird baths to minimize the spread of disease. And for comparison, here is a healthy goldfinch and a bluebird drinking from a bird bath. Notice that motion. And here's the goldfinch at my heated bird bath that I suspected of having some issues. Infection results in internal lesions, and that can cause inflammation, swelling of the esophagus and the crop mucosa, an enlargement of the liver and spleen. So you can see that bird is all fluffed up, not really moving a whole lot, and appears to be having some significant difficulty in drinking, just not acting right, and had me concerned. And this disease can be fatal, and it can occasionally cause significant die-offs around feeders. So although it is not an important cause of population declines in any wildlife bird species, and I just wanted to point out that wild birds play only a small role in transmission of the disease to humans and domestic animals, but it's good to be cautious. And certainly, if you see a dead bird near your feeders, you want to wear gloves and remove it, dispose of it, or submit to, for example, the Michigan DNR's Wildlife Disease Laboratory in Lansing, Michigan, as part of the Michigan State University campus. You don't want that where a family member or a pet can get to the bird. You can also call the wildlife disease section of our DNR at 517-336-5030. And I would encourage you to do that if you're seeing multiple dead birds at your feeder. And remember, when you're doing that, wear gloves, always wash your hands immediately afterwards, and disinfect any equipment that was used. If you want to help a sick bird, we recommend that you contact a federally licensed wildlife rehabilitator before capturing. By law, the Migratory Bird and Treaty Act, it does not allow you to possess or treat a wild bird species. You need to have a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service issued permit, and you will want to make sure that your local wildlife rehabilitator will take a sick songbird. From what I heard and talking to people, it sounds like often the wildlife rehabilitators do not take sick songbirds. And no drugs or antibiotics have been proven to entirely be effective in treating salmonellosis in wild birds, and there's some controversy as to whether it may alter the bird's natural gut flora, and it might produce antimicrobial resistant strains of salmonella that could then spread throughout wild bird populations. So not a lot to do on the treatment front. I do encourage you to look at the DNR website. They have a listing of licensed wildlife rehabilitators nearest you, and check on that before attempting to seek treatment for a bird at your feeder. So prevention is the key. It's important to keep your bird baths and feeders clean. Disinfect every 2 to 4 weeks with a 10% bleach solution. For more details on that, see my Monday with Martha segment number 12. And keep duplicate feeders for a quick change out. If you're not able to disinfect that often, pull the old ones, put out new until you can get to cleaning them. And that is a 9 parts water to 1 part bleach, and you want to soak for at least 10 minutes. So I have a clip on that, and here I am after I saw that bird on my bird bath. giving everything a good disinfecting. And also, it's important to make sure your feeders and tools are completely dry before you put them back into use. So there's my whole bird feeding array dripping dry. And I chose to keep my feeders down as well. Um, you want to regularly clean up the seed, the hulls, and the feces from underneath your feeders. So here's a look at the before. So that's kind of the accumulation of seed that I found as the snow melted this March. And I went about raking up the seed hulls, any debris that I could get up easily with my leaf rake, and accumulated it into a pile and shoveled it and disposed of it in the garbage. You can also put it into a compost bin. You just don't want that material out where other animals can get into it. And here's what it looked like after I was done raking. You can see I had quite the pile of debris. You can also spread your food offerings across multiple feeders and water across multiple baths so that there's less opportunity for sick birds to touch or contaminate healthy birds. So you are essentially trying to social distance your birds. It's also important to report if you see a sick or dead bird. You can report those sightings to the Michigan DNR. I did find that they have a report disease wildlife eyes in the field online form, or you can also call the wildlife disease lab that I mentioned earlier. And Cornell Lab of Ornithology also tracks avian disease, so you can report through eBird or Project Feeder Watch. If you see a sick or dead bird, please pull your bird baths and your feeders down, disinfect them correctly, and consider keeping them down for at least 2 to 4 weeks. That helps, again, social distance your birds and encourages them to disperse across the landscape where healthy birds will have fewer encounters with sick birds. And lastly, and I think most importantly, this just shows us why we should be landscaping our yards and our properties with native plants. Those plants provide seeds and fruit, nectar, and insects to naturally feed our birds. It's important to remember that bird feeders are just a supplemental part of wild bird diets, and that it's really our responsibility to make sure we're providing that supplemental food in a safe way. Growing native vegetation will help promote the natural, safe, and healthy foraging habits in our wild birds and help reduce the risk of the spread of diseases like salmonellosis. I hope this helps, and enjoy watching your backyard birds.